Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby here with Sarah Goldberg, who plays Sally Reed on Barry. And Sarah, the Twitterverse and the blogosphere always has very interesting takes, shall we say, when it comes to Sally. But I read somewhere that you kind of embrace that, particularly the more quote unquote unlikable she becomes. And I'm just wondering what it is about that you love so much.
Well, I think half of what we're doing, as people who work in the arts, is holding up a mirror to society, and I appreciated the fact that when we went into this, I was anticipating a bad reaction to her in a sense, and I welcomed it because, to be honest, I'm really tired of seeing likable women on TV. There's this constant pressure to be likable, and men don't have that on television. And I felt it's fascinating, endlessly fascinating, to see this is a show where you've got a bunch of men who kill people, and we're able to stomach that as a society. No problem, we don't bat an eyelid. But to show an ambitious, slightly narcissistic woman on TV, people have a very strong reaction to that and find her unpalatable. I find that really interesting. So we wanted to kind of push it as far as we could go, or at least I did, in the sense that this is a show about morally bankrupt people. And I didn't want Sally to be exempt from that as the only female series regular on the show. And I always said to the guys, please don't let her fall prey to the likability barometer. That's not who she is on this show, or who she should be. So I embrace it. I'm not on social media, so maybe if I was, I would try to make her nicer. But I try not to read those comments because they're not really for me. People are going to have their own reactions when they're watching something, and they're going to have a response to any kind of narrative story, and people can think what they want about her. I always felt you don't have to like her, you just have to know her. And I always felt like, oh, I know this woman, I've met her before.
Yeah, and I think that the quote, again, I hate the word unlikable because I think it's such a kind of like a stereotype, but women like this are real people. And working in Hollywood, you see she's kind of going through kind of like this accelerated course in the highs and lows of Hollywood this season so far. Has that been easier to play because it's part of, your kind of like experience as an actor, the highs and lows of the business?
I think it's been fun to put her in a new setting and see how she sinks and swims in different ways. I was interested in her having a little bit of power this season, and what she does with that power, whether she becomes a better version of herself or whether the negative qualities in her are amplified. And we decided it was more fun to play with the latter. So, things are moving so fast for her this season, and all her dreams are coming true, but nothing quite fits or feels like it should or is what she thought it would be. And that I can really relate to. And I think most actors can. Things look very different sometimes from the outside than from the inside. And I had a lot of anonymity in my career prior to Barry because I was mostly doing theater. And when Barry came out, it was the first time, I'd be having lunch and somebody would come over and say something. And as lovely as that could be, it can also be kind of scary if you haven't experienced it before. So I tried to pepper that in for Sally, where, these things are happening that she wants, but it keeps fueling her anxiety, and her anxiety is sort of reaching a bit of a fever pitch when we meet her at the top of one even. And yeah, it was, doing that long shot in episode 1 was really fun. We rehearsed it like a musical. It was like doing a little mini play. We had a full day rehearsal before we shot it, which is so rare to get that. Even, camera and everybody and all the setups, and the sets were just stunning, like the level of detail. And, but that thing of everything being flung at her and flung at her and flung at her, and her just having to constantly pivot when she's not necessarily the most evolved person, was really fun to get to play around with.
Yeah, that I mean, we have to talk about that long shot in the first episode, because I think that, when you see that that's how this is going to go, do you immediately get excited, or does it become like terrifying?
Oh, I get excited about stuff like that. Yeah, I love anything that plays out in real time and plays out in a oneer or plays out like in theater. And Bill really went for that stylistically a lot this season. We did a lot of scenes in oneers, and I find it really fun because you get to play the arc, and the rhythm of it. It's you're not playing it for the edit; you're playing it for real time. So, I get really excited about that kind of thing. I was delighted that we got real rehearsal because that was the first thing we shot after a 3-year hiatus. And 2 years where we were all living in a bunker. So nerves were running high for everyone. Just being in a room full of people again was overwhelming. So I was thrilled that we got a chance to really get our dance moves down before shooting it. But I get excited about stuff like that. I really do.
Um, you know, Conversely, we also have, alongside, Sarah's or Sarah, geez, Sally's,
People do it all the time.
as we have Sally's story, but we also have her story in relationship to Barry, and Barry is, as a character, is certainly kind of taking a darker turn this season.
Yes.
And there's that kind of just terrifying scene in where he just screams at her.
Yeah.
And it's a side of Barry, and it's a side of Bill that I don't think a lot of us have seen. What was that shooting experience like? Because he is such a sweet guy in life.
Yeah,
that we're not used to it.
Yeah, and that was a gear that I hadn't seen. There's been not really in season 1 and 2, there hasn't been a moment for that gear. And so, I think this season for all the characters, what's been exciting is that there's new gears for everybody, and that was his. And we rehearse everything. We're really lucky on Barry in that way. We all get around a table long before we shoot anything and talk it through, work it through, rehearse it, rewrite. So we were really prepped for that scene, and we tweaked it in a way that felt right. But I hadn't seen him do it yet, like full on, until on the day. And Bill and I work similarly in that we like to keep things really kind of loose and buoyant between takes. Neither of us are method actors, and we don't like to go into some dark space and then switch it. We need the energy to kind of have the focus in the takes. So we were just kind of goofing around, and then they called action, and then he came out with that, and I was like, okay, I guess I don't really have to act in this scene because this is pretty scary. So it was I don't want to say it was a joy to play because that sounds pretty messed up, but it was like, it was exciting. It was exciting to see him perform that gear, and it was exciting to see the writing work. And we tried some things with that where Sally was more apologetic for his behavior and making excuses to everybody, and we decided ultimately to lift it, and we thought it might be more powerful if if she's covering for him, the implication is that she realizes what's happening. Whereas if we don't have that cover, we could play it like this is just her having a trauma response, and she's on this kind of pattern of behavior from her prior experiences. And it's not until Ellie Fisher, so brilliant, in episode 4, says something that snaps her out of it, that she kind of wakes up to the reality of what's happening. So that if there was any challenge in that scene, I suppose it would be, I wanted to find something where Sally's reaction to what he was doing was an inappropriate response to what's happening in the moment. So kind of bursting out laughing was what I could think of that doesn't match what's happening, because she's not computing, she's not absorbing what's happening, she's in fight or flight.
And it's so perfect to her character because it does call back to where we've seen her in the past, and she kind of just goes on autopilot until that ironically, and you bring it up, Ellie Fisher, the marvelous Elsie Fisher.
The marvelous Ellie Fisher.
I think we should just make that her name from now on.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but she's the one to really wake Sally up.
Yeah, yes.
And that scene is so nuanced. What was shooting that scene like?
Well, I thought that the storyline that they wrote for Elsie was really brilliant. I mean, we were all like these huge Elsie Fisher fans. We all loved eighth grade so much. And I think we were at the Critics' Choice Awards years ago, and she was winning her award for it. And we were all around a table. Goldberg and I were sitting next to her. And we're like, God damn it, she's so good. So we like wooed her. We really wanted her on the show. And I thought the storyline they wrote for her was just brilliant. That she's the greenest person in the room, the newest person, the youngest person, and she's the only one who's seeing things clearly. And I thought the nuance of how they wrote, on an all-female network and a female-driven story in this TV show within the TV show, you have this young woman piping up about something that's going wrong. And you watch these other women nervous for their jobs, unable, paralyzed to help, not really sure how to help or if it's their business. And, that's a complicated thing to write about in a half-hour comedy. And I was glad that they went there, and it was so nuanced and really quite moving. And Elsie, I think, played that arc so brilliantly and subtly. And when we finally get to that scene in 4 where she does say it, I think it's Sally lives in a dishonest place most of the time. And like I always say, that what I said, the performance of her life thing, it's like she's not touching down ever. She's somewhere up here. And this young, intelligent woman who Sally's grown to kind of love and feels as her kind of protege, just very bluntly and clearly states what she's witnessed. And it's like she wakes up out of a dream, she kind of punctures that layer of that false layer that's on the surface of Sally that she's developed as a survival skill, really. So it was a great scene to play because there was a lot of truth in it, and Elsie just did it so well. And I really, and also, Sally's having this epic night where her dreams are coming true. And we could easily have seen Sally just kind of run away with that and not touch down. But there's something about the simple honesty of this young woman that, it was like cold water in the face for her.
Well, and of course that leads up to the big speech in episode 4. And I have to imagine that when you see that speech, all the layers that are in it and all the notes that you have to hit. I mean, take us through that speech, because it's such a tightrope walk where it's funny, it's tragic, it's joyful, and it's a callback to old like 1970s Oscar acceptance speeches, which just made me happy as a film nerd.
Thanks for saying that, because that's what I wanted to infuse in it. Well, that was not what was on the page, to be honest. The guys are brilliant in the way they collaborate with us. And, generally when I've got a speech, they sort of go, here's the scaffolding, and kind of, you can go away and do what you want with it. This speech, we kind of rewrote it all together in this way. We tried something completely different, where Sally becomes kind of really aggressive and competitive and excited in this totally almost violent way when she gets that news. And then something about it just didn't feel right for the character. And so we brought it back to this other place where we thought, this is her biggest dream, right? And it's coming true, but she's having the realization in real time in front of a lot of people. So the idea that I felt was strong in it was, she's having a very private moment in public. And we kind of cut out all the text, really. There was a huge reams and reams of text in the middle of that. And it was actually Bill who was kind of like, let's try one where you are alone in your room and take as long as you want digesting this news. So we went for a take, and I just kind of kept holding it and holding it. And there were about 250 background artists in the room, and it was so awkward because it felt like I think everybody was so worried about me that I'd completely forgotten my lines. And we just held it until like it couldn't have been any more uncomfortable. And then picked back up with the latter half of the text, which I did try to model off of 1970s Oscar acceptance speeches. So I'm so glad you got that. I'm so interested when people win awards, that this thing that happens, that it is a private moment happening in public, and this kind of the voice getting higher and higher, and the tears coming, and and for Sally, she's not even winning an award, by the way, but she's performing like she is. So that was kind of the mishmash there of how we came up with that. But I thought, oh, we'll cut it all to shreds, and none of that will make the cut, and it'll play it.
And it's filmed, in I think a way that is perfect for the character, because it's this big moment in front of all these people, but it's dark. You got the solo spotlight, and I think it's a testament to the directing on that show. Bill and Alec do the majority of the directing,
they did the whole season this year.
And so what is it that they bring as directors that helps you get to those places?
Well, I think they create such a collaborative atmosphere where everybody feels valued, everybody feels like their opinion matters. HBO are also so supportive, so we have a lot of time. There isn't a rushed feeling on set, which is rare. I think they both have obviously huge comedy chops and huge amounts of experience. But they don't have big egos, and so they are so open to everyone's ideas, and equally they're not afraid of pitching bad ideas. They'll sort of pitch, they'll pitch and they'll pitch and they'll pitch, maybe they'll throw out 9 bad ideas, but the 10th one's absolutely brilliant. And I really learned a lot from that style of working, about not being precious over things, but actually just trying to get to the best version of something. And they really both have that. They're incredibly intelligent, and they've gone for something that's so tonally complex and challenging. And I think they're great at just getting us to try things, to be honest. And I think, being in a 3rd season, there's a luxury in the comfort of everybody knowing each other very well, everybody knowing the characters very well. So there's a freedom in that, and they don't shy away from letting that play out instead of kind of saying, do you know what, there's a comma in that sentence, if you could just hit that comma, they really kind of are open. And I think that that's made the atmosphere very special. They're equally fastidious about story beats, and they're not going to let you, they're not going to let you go way off track and suddenly we lose the thread. So they've got that balance down.
Do you ever imagine a scenario where, say, Sally were to win like a big industry award?
Yeah.
Is that like one of those moments that you would just like go, ooh, I know what I would do with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a pretty amplified version of episode 4. It would be like that on speed, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I think she would lose her shit. Yeah, I think, it's fun the way they've written her this season. She wants to hook into who she is as an artist, and that's genuine, but she can't resist the other thing. She's got a huge appetite for the dangling prize, and she wants to be a star. She says it in season 1, and that's her mission.
Well, she is a star, and so are you. So everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for interviews with more contenders throughout the season. Sarah Goldberg from Barry, great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
You too, Tony. Thank you so much. So nice to talk to you.